All right, hello everyone. Thank you for being here. We're really excited to host this panel on the Airbus booth today on International Women's Day. So we're gonna get started here. So I'm Erin Callender with Airbus.
And I'm Jennifer Steiner, and we'll be your host for the panel today. We're thrilled to be taking part in this discussion that is of such importance today. The aerospace sector has historically been seen as a really male-dominated sector, even though we see more and more women coming into STEM and the aviation industry. However, there still is a lot of room for growth. One study on gender diversity showed that about 9% of aerospace engineers and pilots are women, and we see similar figures like this echoed throughout the industry. This is why this year's theme for International Women's Day, Break the Bias, is so key. Breaking down gender biases is a critical part in advancing women in our industry. And as we know, the first step in breaking a bias is bringing it into the daylight, talking about it, and becoming aware that it exists. So that's why we're so excited to be having this conversation today and to continue on our commitment of making sure that we are fostering an inclusive environment, one which welcomes each and every one of us.
So let me introduce our panelists for you today. So from the CEO of Medtrans, sitting next to me, we have Kim Montgomery.
Hi.
We have Kim Barwick, Vice President of Scholarships from the Whirly Girls Association. Elon Head, contributing editor at Vertical. Balkhi Saryan, Head of UAM Strategy, Exhibition and Partnerships with Airbus. And
Hello.
Johannes Dienemann, the VP of Industry and Civil Programs for Airbus Helicopters here in the US. So thank you all for being with us today. All right, so I'm going to kick it off. We'll start off with the first question. I'm going to open it up to everyone on the panel. So, what is one time that you've been confronted with a bias in this industry? Has this ever happened to you? And what does breaking the bias mean to you? So, Kim, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. I'll be happy to start off. So thank you. First of all, thanks for having us. We're thrilled to be here. I would say early in my career, when I was in my 20s, which was a few years ago, generally it was assumed that I was one of two things. I was somebody's executive assistant, or I was a CSR, because I worked in the aviation industry. So then you get a few years older, and things change a little bit, and so normally now it's, again, still executive assistant, or it's somebody's spouse. So, the question is like, well, who do you belong to? And so that's, some of the things that we're, accustomed to fielding now, less so when I was younger.
So for myself, on many occasions, I've had the situation where I've been greeting passengers, loading their baggage, loading them, giving them the safety brief, and then they jump in the pilot seat, and then they all look at me and go, "You're the pilot?" And I say yes, and off we go. So that's one example of what has happened to me in the industry. What breaking the bias means to me is that I never hear again, "I didn't think I could do that because I've never seen a woman in that role."
So I've been working for Vertical magazine for quite some time now, about 13 years. And a lot of the stories we do at Vertical, we visit different helicopter operators, and we learn about what they do, and then we do an air-to-air photo shoot with them because we're very much about spectacular photography. So when I visit helicopter companies, I'm often accompanied by a photographer, who's usually a man. And I would say that over the years, maybe 80–90% of the companies I visit, the people we visit automatically assume that the male photographer is the expert. So they usually assume that he's the one who's the pilot, or that has the technical knowledge or the industry knowledge. And sometimes that's the case, but certainly not always. And I have to say our photographers are great at finding ways to reinforce the fact that yes, she does know what she's talking about. But it's so common that it's often the case that even when I'm the one asking the questions, the answers will be directed to the photographer, who's just sitting there looking uncomfortable. So not uncommon.
I pick up on that a little bit, and maybe we talk about our assumptions and the norms that we're used to and the models that we're expected to fit into. So I have a very simple experience, actually, that's happened throughout my career. I've spent my career in aerospace, so yes, we are a male-dominated traditional industry. And with my name, which is Balkis Sarahan, all throughout my career, it has always been, Mr. Balkis Sarahan. May I speak to Mr. Balkis Sarahan? And it's such a natural assumption. There's no, malicious intent, but it is such a natural assumption that the first pronoun that we go to is always Mr. So this is something that I experience. So.
Okay, so I am a man, and so my view on bias is a little bit different, from a different angle. And not that I didn't disagree or anything. Just on my end, I manage a manufacturing facility, a production facility of 280 people in the middle of Mississippi, and it's hard to find people in the first place to work there. And due to the bias, the negative consequence is that a whole group of people simply is not available to work for us, right? So we're lacking applicants. When I post a position for a program manager, for example, I get 50 applications. Out of those 50 applications, maybe I have one female applicant. So I really see, as somebody who has to manage people, who has to hire people, who has to run a business, the consequences, the downstream consequences of the bias, conscious or unconscious, are very negative. And so I have a very personal interest in fixing this, and therefore I'm happy to be here on the panel.
And thank you very much. We're happy to have you on the panel as well, because it goes to show that it takes an entire industry. It takes everybody supporting the conversation for there to be any progress. So thanks for accepting to be here with us today.
Happy to.
And I think your comment leads really well into our next question.
Yes, exactly. That we kind of address this in the next question. So again, we would love to hear from everyone on this. The industry continues to face a shortage of qualified personnel in general, but especially women in aviation. In your opinion, what can we collectively be doing more to break gender bias and encourage women and girls to pursue careers in the aviation industry?
Okay, I'll get started. So at Airbus, we take the inclusion and diversity topics very seriously, and we have training on bias, where we learn to differentiate between conscious and unconscious bias. I think being aware of a bias is the first step in fixing the bias. What we specifically do, we have all kinds of outreach groups. I mean, the panel today is just one example, but at our factory in Mississippi in the next 2 weeks, we'll have a big event at Columbus Air Force Base, which is a very significant Air Force base, and we have a STEM outreach program there, so we'll have a helicopter on static display and try to address as many young people as possible. And in our previous discussions, I think we all agreed that it's much easier to change the situation by addressing younger generations and older generations. So lots of interactions with high schools and colleges, because that's where we see the future to swing the pendulum and get more women in aviation. And I think we've had plenty of examples that we'll address here in a second.
I pick up maybe on a simple theme, role models. So, and it's role models in different functions, in different aspects, in different roles in life. And, if we pick up on the younger generation, we traditionally teach our younger generation that there are very stereotype expectations in the toys that are produced, in the way that our children are addressed, in the way that our children are dressed. And this already is creating some sort of pre-programming, not only in the daughters. I'm a proud mother of a 4-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old boy, but it is as much as how we program our girls and as much as how we program our boys as well. So I think here it's just breaking down the role model aspect of it from a very, very early age. So be anything, do anything, and let them do that, not just say it.
So I'll address this from the perspective of becoming a pilot. I'm sure many people in the audience are aware that becoming a helicopter pilot, if you pursue the civil route, is a very expensive process. And I think that this, disadvantages anyone who doesn't come from a background where they, have exposure to aviation, perhaps, have other pilots in the family who can help support them in this process, or have a lot of money. Money always helps. So And if you don't have that background in aviation, you need to catch up. And if it's a matter of catching up when you're flying helicopters, that can be really expensive, and it can easily be tens of thousands of dollars that you're behind, just from the starting line. And so I think that scholarship programs, which Kim can speak to, are a really helpful thing in just leveling the playing field. Not necessarily giving women an advantage or minorities an advantage for that matter, but just helping bring people to the same starting line so they have the same chance to pursue their passion.
I agree with Ilan here. One of the issues of introducing people into the industry is funding. It is expensive to learn how to fly helicopters, and having programs out there that offer scholarships really helps. Whirly Girls is a non-profit organization, charitable organization that offered over $100,000 in scholarships this year. But it'd be nice if we could get some more from the industry to help out, or just options for funding. Another thing that I see to try and help young girls get into the industry is just letting them know it's an option for them. This is a second career for me, because when I was at high school, I didn't know it was an option. I'd never met a pilot, let alone a female pilot, let alone a female helicopter pilot. So we need to get in those schools, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, let them know that it is an option for them, and not just to be in a pilot, to get into the aviation industry, because there's so many options, and it's a fun industry to be in.
Yeah, to echo what Kim says, I never thought aviation was an option to me. It didn't even enter my mind, and I fell, very accidentally into, the role that I'm in now, and the segment of the industry that I'm in. And so I think what I would like to see more of is an understanding that there's more for you to do in aviation than a very narrow window of maybe pilot or mechanic or engineer. There's legal or finance or marketing. There's many ways to be involved in aviation that I never even realized before I actually got into it. So.
And the representation piece, kind of, Kim, what you were saying is really important as well, because if you see it, you can be it, right? So if you see a woman pilot, then oh, well, I can do that too. And so I think that's something that's probably really important.
It really is. And I went to speak at a elementary school once, and I asked the teacher not to say my name, just that they were going to be meeting a helicopter pilot. And then when I walked into the classroom, I asked the kids, was I what you expected? And they said no. And I said, why is that? And the brave kids actually said, you're not a man. So it really is. But, once we had the conversation about how can you get into aviation and options, there are options for you out there. I ask simple questions like, if you like telling people where to go, maybe you should be an air traffic controller. So, just planting that seed at a young age.
So, Ilan, I have a question that's going to be somewhat specifically directed towards you, but of course anyone is more than welcome to chime in. So I want to kind of hear what you think the role of media and social media in general is in not only creating or perpetuating bias, but also in helping to break it.
Yes, I'm very happy to talk about social media. And I see some great social media influencers in the audience, so thank you for coming. So I think intuitively it seems like social media would be a great way to expose women and girls to aviation, right? Because you have great role models who are showing that you can be a successful female pilot. And so on the surface it seems like this is something that is really positive for the industry. But in my role managing social media for Vertical Magazine, I learned that the algorithms that underlie these social media platforms can actually, I think, be doing more harm than good. So I've found that like the Vertical Facebook page, for example, historically it's been about 10% female followers, which is not a lot, but it's more than the percentage of female pilots in the industry. So I kind of thought, hey, this is great. We're exposing more women to the fact they can be a helicopter pilot. But when I really looked closely at the numbers, I found that Facebook was distributing my posts to an audience that was about 99.9% male. So even though there are women out there who had expressed an interest, specific interest, I want to see posts from Vertical Magazine, I want to see posts about helicopters, Facebook's algorithms decided, no, you really don't. Let's show you something about yoga instead. And there's great, yoga's great too. There's some great, helicopter pilot yogis, but these algorithms, I think, are really doing a lot to, reinforce these gender stereotypes in ways that really aren't apparent, to the people putting out content. And so the way we got around this at Vertical was we had to create separate advertising campaigns that targeted women exclusively. Just show our posts to women, and that was the only way that Facebook would, show our posts to women, is if we paid a premium to show it to women only, as well as, to our typical audience.
So we just have one last question before we close the rest of our panel. To all the young women and the young girls who may be watching this today, what is one thing you would say to them to inspire this next generation?
I would say aviation is the most exciting thing ever, so regardless of gender. And I actually see we have a young applicant out there in the audience too.
I would echo that as well. It's we're here, and it's a passionate field, and it only gets better, really. When we think of new technologies, new applications, how it becomes closer to the public, I think also this kind of accessibility of it will just draw more and more attention and hopefully more passion to it. And in a statement, we are just better together, really. And it doesn't matter of gender, it doesn't matter of background. And it makes it more interesting.
And I would say, be aware of the fact that we all have biases, including women. Just the fact of growing up and living in this very gendered society, it can seem that these stereotypes are so deeply ingrained that it can seem like there are actual innate biological differences between men and women, and men are better at some things and women are better than others. But the skills involved in aviation are human skills. They can be learned by anyone, men and women, with study and practice. And if you find that aviation is hard, it's not because you're a woman. Aviation is hard for everyone. And you are just as capable of a man as overcoming those challenges.
For the young girls out there, just be you. Do you. If you want to be a mechanic, be a mechanic. If you want to be a pilot, be a pilot. If you don't, don't. Just be you. Do what you want to do. You can do it.
Yeah. And very simply, find your passion, find your purpose, and go for it.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much to everyone for being with us today. This was really, really insightful for us, and we're really proud to have all of you on stage discussing this today on International Women's Day. So thank you very much for your support. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Take a picture. What is an engineer? What is a pilot? What is a leader? What is a mechanic? What does it take to succeed? And what does that look like for you, or you, or me? Am I what you were expecting? If not, it's time we changed our expectations.